All right, everyone, we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to RetailX. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sapna Shah. I'm the founder of RetailX. I'm an angel investor. I invest in the future of retail and consumer. And I am absolutely thrilled that we're all here. This is like the biggest registration we've gotten for a session. So I think you all know it's going to be great. We are recording the session, so if you have to leave early or want to check back in with it, it will be posted on the RetailX YouTube channel in the next few days or so. We are going to have a moderated discussion, about 30-ish minutes of Q&A of questions I've previously prepared. And then we'll have time for your audience questions at the end. So please put them in the chat as we go along, and we will get to as many as we can. And with that, Jessica, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And first of all, I remember when you were just starting RetailX, and I'm just so excited for you about how much it's grown, and just, yeah, you're a force. So I'm excited to be here.
You're very sweet. Okay, so let's kick this off. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Gray and what your focus on investment is, and then we'll get into kind of the questions.
Yeah, perfect. So great to see everybody. Thank you for having me. So I'm Jessica. I'm the founding partner of Hannah Gray. We're a new first check venture fund that tracks societal shifts to identify areas of opportunity and exciting companies. So my background is, I had a pretty non-traditional background to get into venture. I started my career on the customer side at a global media agency. So I was running the media strategy for brands like H&M, Gucci, Puma, Gucci, 20th Century Fox, Verizon. I was really fortunate to be running Verizon's media strategy from 2009 to 12. So we actually hated the iPhone because it was locked into AT&T at the time. I launched the Android device for them with this just terrible campaign, Droid does. But then I also did the industry's first ever iPad sponsorships with Time Inc. And I was really fortunate to be in that position because it just gave me a front row seat in terms of how mobile adoption was happening and the explosion of the App Store. And I started to connect startups with Fortune 500 brands and just recognize that there is this huge deficiency in terms of just linking these two worlds together. Started working with startups in the space in probably 2011, 2010, 2011-ish. So for those of you that are kind of old school New York City tech entrepreneurs, it was a very different community back then. And as a non-technical female, I quickly realized that my ability to help startup founders better understand how to commercialize their business, how to get their first customers, how to do sales, marketing, branding, content strategy, media strategy was super valuable when the skill sets of entrepreneurs at that time tended to be more product or engineering focused. So I left the corporate world in 2012 to go to a startup myself. We were one of the first innovation boutiques that specialized in connecting big brands and startups. So again, kind of the theme has been helping startups get their first customers, help them scale that business to a few million in revenue, worked with brands like Kraft and Unilever and Mondelez, and then transitioned to corporate venture capital in 2014, which is really where I cut my teeth in the venture community. So for 6 years, I was running the corporate VC strategy of a global advertising holding company, investing in all mainly B2B solutions for the modern CMO. So a lot around retail tech and commerce, but also data and analytics and content and audio and things that were basically changing the way the customers would interact with brands. Also along that way, recognized there wasn't a lot of women in the space. In 2015, I co-founded Women in VC, which today we've scaled into the world's largest community for women investors. We're now over 3,100 women across over 1,900 venture firms in 180 cities and 63 countries globally. So just really proud to have built what's become just the largest community for women investors to just better connect, collaborate, and create opportunities. Left corporate to launch Hannah Gray, which I just mentioned with my partner Kate Beardsley. Kate was a founding member at Lyra Hippo, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So she was the first investor in Venmo. and also was really a major contributor to decisions around the ability to invest in Warby Parker, Glossier, Casper, Birchbox, Bubble Bar, BarkBox, and everything that is in Layer's first three funds. So it's a little bit about where I've come from. But I also just want to say, I tend to speak super unfiltered. So any questions you guys have, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but just as we get to the Q&A, nothing is off limits. Whatever you guys want to ask, like, bring it. Happy to answer.
Oh my gosh, you're going to open the floodgates there. Okay. But before we get to the Q&A, kind of let's start with basics. So, this session is really all about raising pre-seed. And I think a lot of the founders on this call are either raising pre-seed or about to. So let's start with like the very beginning. What do you expect to see from founders as they begin to raise a pre-seed round? Like, what should they be prepared with? Pre-seed is so early, right? Like, we don't have a ton. What do you like to see? What are the kinds of things that would make you excited about investing in a founder at Preseed?
Yeah, so founders at Preseed, for us, it's really about a few things. So number one, what is that founder market fit? Why do you want to solve this problem? What is this problem that you've exposed that you want to solve for? And it's also, you can't be motivated by money. That just is not something that is, number one, exciting to investors. It's just like, what has happened in your life or in your career that just makes you obsessively need to solve this problem? And, then what network, what operating experience, what connections, what domain expertise do you have to make you be the right person to tackle this problem? So I think whenever you're going out to raise a pre-seed round, just be mindful that investors are kind of going through this mental checklist. It's kind of first like, do I believe you? Like, do I believe that this is a problem? Do I believe that customers will pay for it? And then it's also like, okay, I believe that you've sold me that there's a problem. You've sold me that customers will pay for it. And then it's like, okay, do I like you? Which like can kind of sound crazy, but like, let's be honest, you can't fire an investor. You're going to be working with this person for 6, 8, 10 years. And it's a very it's a fascinating relationship because there's going to be really high highs and there's going to be low lows. And you have to be able to create a relationship of just trust and transparency and openness. So you want there to be a good chemistry fit with the founder and also with the founder, with the investor, to make sure that like you like me and that I'm somebody that can be helpful to your business and create value and somebody you want to have along with the ride. And then it sort of becomes, okay, I believe you, I like you. Do I think you're the right person to do this? And that really comes into the play up around that product founder market fit that I was referencing. So I think bringing that story together to pre-seed conversations is really important, is because you want to be able to clearly communicate that you've exposed and identified an interesting market opportunity that hasn't been solved for, and that you are the right party and team to solve it. I would say that's number one.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned founder market fit, because I think a lot of founders come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, talking about product market fit. The first question I always ask is, why are you doing this? Right?
Yeah.
Like what was that? Yeah. What was that motivation? And I think a lot of times either that's not in the deck or it's not in the story, and you just don't really know. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Okay, so the other thing I'm really glad you mentioned is kind of that fit with the investor. So obviously there's some chemistry there, clearly, that you've sort of alluded to, but it's also hard to figure out the right investors at pre-seed, right? Because you're more of a generalist fund, right? I'm very focused on the future of retail and consumer. But I think many pre-seed angels and VCs are a little more generalist. So how should founders go about figuring out who even those right investors are and figuring out that process?
Totally. Yeah, that's a great question, because I believe you have to treat your fundraising like a sales cycle, right? And so I think the best way to do that is twofold. Number one, what are companies that you really admire that have raised venture funding? Maybe it's something in your category, maybe it's a competitor, maybe it's just adjacent. and then go look to see who backed them. So the first is really saying like, okay, what investors have on their track record experiences or connections that might be helpful to me as a founder? Because you want to be really intentional about your outreach, and you want to be really intentional about demonstrating why this investor in this fund could be a really nice fit for your business. And so I think that can be step one, is just make a list of 10 to 15 startups that you really admire, that you feel is a nice complement to what you're doing. Maybe not competitive because you don't want it to be a conflict, but just something that like emulates what you want to build. So one great example, two great examples actually. So Kate, my partner, was the first investor in Venmo. The founder of Venmo is also an advisor to our fund. So we see a ton of interesting fintech deal flow, for example, because they want Kate's perspective of what did Venmo look like in the earliest days? How did they build it? Like, let me learn from that. And so your track record as an investor is your best billboard to attract founders. Second is, I would say most VCs are pretty opinionated and probably like sharing and talking about themselves and their views. So go on LinkedIn, go on Substack, go on Medium, go on Twitter, and just see who's talking about something that's interesting to you. And then always feel free to reach out and say, I read your article on Medium, or I was in your Clubhouse room. I gotta say, because now it's like all the rage. Or like, I was in your Clubhouse room and I really appreciated your insights in X, Y, and Z. Here's what I'm doing. Like, would love to get your feedback. Because what they always say is, ask a VC for advice, you'll get money. Ask a VC for money, you'll get advice. So I think always being thoughtful and intentional about that outreach to, again, reference an investment that they made, a commentary they had, a blog post they did, are just things that you can attach back to your business. And again, just demonstrate the relevancy of why they might be interested in you and what value they could provide or what insight they could provide to your company as it scales. And that's just a really nice organic way to be building the relationship. Is, I would say, the first couple places to start, but be very intentional and treat it like a sales cycle. And the last thing I'll say is like, how do I say this? Like, don't think you need to chase investors. Like, you have so many things on your plate. Like, if an investor isn't responding, if an investor, like, just cut bait. It is not worth your time to chase them. They will find you if and when they have bandwidth, or if and when it's something that they've been thinking about. Sometimes I'll meet with companies and it'll like keep me up at night because I'll just be like thinking about that problem, or like thinking about that conversation, or like thinking about why I want to help that entrepreneur. And so time is your most important thing. And so just as you're talking to dozens and dozens and dozens of investors, kind of create a funnel around people you like, people you jam well with, people that might be helpful, and just whittle it down that way to find groups and people that are going to be the best fit for you.
So I love that you said treat it like a sales process, because I think that's exactly such a perfect analogy. So sales processes can take a really long time. And in fact, the kind of work that you're talking about putting into it, like first in thinking about those founders and then researching all, I mean, this all feels like a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
So, how long are you seeing, pre-seed raises take, kind of maybe on average, or maybe even the range? Especially, I think it's a little different when it's angels only and it's a, smaller raise, but when a VC gets involved, like how long does that really take?
It totally depends on the fund. Like, I wish I could say it's like a clean cut, this is what it is, but like every firm is going to have a different process. Every partner is going to have a different comfort level. What I think is important for you as the founder is, in that first meeting, say, what's your process to close? How long does it normally take? Like, help make them tell you the path that you should expect, so it can not only just manage your expectations, but it'll tell you in the back of your mind is, are you on a path to close? If it's a repeat founder that investor has backed before, it could be like, Jeremy, I don't care what you're working on. I shouldn't say Jeremy. Diane, I don't care what you're working on. Like, of course, whatever you want to do, like, I'm going to back you because I've had a great experience with you. We work really well together. Your last company sold for $1 billion. Like, of course, whatever you're doing, I'm going to back you again. That can be like an email. But for most of us, we don't have that experience, or we don't have those relationships. And so it does take time to get to know the investors. And so that's why it's like, always be fundraising, always be keeping the top of your funnel full, always be seeing like who's helpful, who's following through, who's showing an interest in your business, who's making connections, who do you want to have in your round. But like I said, there's not really a one size fits all in terms of it should take this long. But I'll say just plan for it to take longer than you expected is maybe just a good way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to kind of pivot to diligence. So diligence is weird a little bit at Preseed, right?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
isn't a whole lot there. So what
Yeah.
kind of diligence do you do for kind of Preseed companies? I mean, you're a first check company. There is generally very little there.
Yeah.
What kind of diligence should a founder expect?
Yeah. So I would say that there's a few different layers to it. So first of all, it's always going to be references. It's always going to be references that are on sheet and references that are off sheet. So if you ever want to know who the VC is probably referencing, just look to see who your connections are on LinkedIn in common, your mutual connections. That's probably who they might talk to, just as like a insider trick of the trade. We also like to really dig into the market. So we really believe at Preseed that it's less about being sector specific and it's more about finding changes in human behavior, changes in customer behavior, changes in employee behavior that can create areas of opportunity. So we really look to understand, what are these micro and macro forcing functions, societal shifts, changes in behavior that is going to contribute to the growth of this company. So we spend a lot of time just like understanding the nuances of what is happening in the world that is going to make this company a success. We love companies that are, B2B2C. So if you look at something like Zoom or something like Slack, technically that's a B2B play. You're selling it to the enterprise, but it's because of the changes on the employee level around how you do meetings and how you interact with each other that really makes it sticky and a breakout success. So that's kind of what we mean when we say like forcing functions that are changing customer behavior or employee behavior. And then third something that we look at really is, what type of brand are you building? Is it opinionated? Do you have some just early fanatic customers? Are you building a community? That's something that we really look at a lot because we don't want something that you're just going to have to throw a lot of marketing spend at. That's really like superficial love, right? Like that's just like not sustainable. It costs like a lot of money to be on Instagram or throw money into Facebook ads. So how is this company being creative and scrappy and clever around customer acquisition? And that can be around community building, that can be around education. We're really seeing a lot of like this kind of intersection of education and community as a new acquisition. So how are you building in that foundation that includes thoughtful data collection, that includes building out this really identity-driven community as just some interesting early indicators of what could be success?
Yeah, I think that's really some helpful context. And I think one thing you said that kind of struck me is that like this, what are you doing kind of on the early customer traction? What if there is no customer traction yet? What if you're truly like pre-customer, maybe you have a product or an MVP or it's about to launch? Is that like, how do you show something on that front?
Okay. We invest pre-product, we invest in pre-revenue, but it's more about like, what's your plan and what's your vision? And how much do we underwrite the fact that we think you can execute on this successfully? So it's okay if you don't have those early customers, you don't have that community yet, but are you demonstrating an understanding of the importance of that? Are you demonstrating the understanding of how to build a community? You can't just throw up a Slack group or throw up a face and just expect people to come and have it not be crickets and really awkward. Like do you have a demonstrated understanding of community building? Have you done something in the past where you've proven that you can be successful? Like that's okay too. But I think it is just being really aligned on the thinking and the vision that the founder has to give us confidence to underwrite that they're going to be able to execute successfully. And then again, that's coupled with these macro and micro forcing functions that we do a little bit of our own research. We have a tool that we use internally just to really gut check some of these changes in behavior. That again is coupled with the references to really know, like, is this person going to say what they're going to do? Are they a good person? Do they have integrity? Are they resilient? So if it is something that is just very clean state, that there is nothing, then it's, what have you done historically that we can underwrite to give us confidence that you'll be able to do it again?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful context. I think one of the questions I get most is, well, until I raise money, I can't show you kind of this traction. And so I'm like, founders, I think, find themselves in this like vicious cycle of not knowing kind of how to answer the questions. Super helpful. So kind of switching a little bit to talk about the current environment. It was really interesting. There was another call this morning where we were talking about this. And I find the current environment so surprising. If you had asked me like in March or April of last year, what's going to happen with fundraising and founders and VC money, I would have had a completely different answer. So what are you kind of seeing in the pre-seed market kind of right now, just in terms of availability of capital and where even valuations are and just in general sort of the overall landscape for pre-seed?
Yeah, I mean, deals are getting done. Absolutely. I mean, I think that so maybe I'll take a step back, because something that we really observed in early March is you kind of had two classes of investors a little bit. You had investors that had been a part of the last recession and investors that weren't. And the ones that were a part of it really recognized, like, this is when you need to double down. This is an exciting opportunity. There is so much creative creation that comes out of these crisis vintages. Like, now I am so thrilled to be an early stage investor in this moment in time because of all these disconnects that are happening in the market. It is just like so ripe for creativity. And I think you're seeing a lot of investors looking to capture that. So there's absolutely capital available. There are new funds that are getting funded that are debuting, which is really exciting. So I'm really bullish on the future of pre-seed. And then I think you have some other investors that haven't maybe been through this type of recession moment in time before, that are just more comfortable sitting on the sidelines. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody kind of has their own personal decision, especially at the pre-seed when it is a lot of angels and individuals or family offices that just, venture will be like a small slice of their overall portfolio. So you don't know what's going on, if they got like real estate, if they got oil and gas, like what's happening in the public, like you just don't know the full picture of their investments, especially when you're dealing with individuals. But from a pre-seed standpoint, from a VC pre-seed standpoint, like these are one of the moments that like you wait for. And the valuations I think are aggressive but fair. I think people absolutely are putting a premium on repeat founders that are coming back to, for their next act, but I don't think that's any different than it usually is. So I think these are priced fairly, based on traction that they're seeing in the market, based on pedigree of the founder, based on relationships they have with the investors. But in general, I think it's a great time to be raising a pre-seed round.
So, and maybe we should have actually started with this. I'm now thinking that maybe I did these questions in the wrong order. What round size or kind of size of raise do you consider to be pre-seed?
So it depends on where you are in the country, to be honest. A New York and a San Francisco pre-seed round look very different than a pre-seed round in Phoenix and Austin and San Diego and some of these emerging hubs. And especially as we're kind of seeing a migration away from the coast into some of these more lifestyle cities, given like I could be anywhere right now, but I am bunkered down in New York. So I do think that, when it comes to the amount of capital you need for the pre-seed round, it is largely contingent on your geography. So for coastal companies, we're still seeing pre-seed rounds ranging from 750 to 3 million. I still think that you need valuations under 10. I think a lot of pre-seed funds will kind of turn into a pumpkin as valuations get north of 10, because, there's It's just the way their model works in terms of the amount of ownership they're looking to capture and the check size they have the capacity to write. So I think that's something just to be mindful of. But pre-seed rounds in other parts of the country, more emerging ecosystems, we're seeing them between 300K and $1.5 million. And again, it just kind of, it depends on what do you need to hit your milestones. And I think that it's a shift we're seeing because it shouldn't be like, I think I need to raise $2 million, or like somebody told me I need to raise $2 million. Like, you as a founder should be really thoughtful about what capital do I need to achieve my goals in the next 18 to 24 months to get me to that next milestone. So when you're thinking about how much you need to raise, I think you first need to think about, okay, what are the KPIs that are most important to the success of this company in the next 18 months? What does that look like? What are those 3 things I need to focus on? And then peel that back a little bit to say, okay, what capital do I need to get there? Who do I need to hire? What sales and marketing do I need? What infrastructure do I need to build out? What are the costs of my tech stack? So you can really come to a thoughtful conclusion about how much you need based on all those different factors. And then, you got to inflate it by, call it 20, 30%, just because like shit's going to happen and you just got to give yourself a buffer. So I think that like it should be less about, the industry says pre-seed rounds should be between 1 to 3 million, and it should be about you as a founder being in control of the capital needs of your business to back into what you're going to need to really achieve your milestones and exceed them for when you're ready for your next round of financing.
Okay, I'm so glad you just talked about that, because as a former investment banker, and many people who are on this call have probably heard me say this, is that you have to figure out how much it's going to cost you to get to those customer milestones, revenue milestones, whatever they are. And that is how much money you need to raise, not like I need a 12-month runway and then in 12 months I've run out of money, but I don't have any milestones.
Right.
I think this is like it's hard, right? Because you actually have to figure out all the math, right? And all into Excel, and that's generally not most founders' forte. But
it's also like a very easy thing for VCs to poke holes in, right? And so your job as a founder is to never give them a reason to say no, because we want to say yes, like we do, but you just have to think about every single dot on the graph that's going to get you to that path to close. And so I'll meet founders all the time that'll say, we're raising 4 million. I'll say like, okay, why do you need 4 million? And they'll be like, because we do. And then it's like, okay, well, walk me through your operating budget, walk me through your hiring plan, walk me through your marketing costs. Like just dissect that round for me. So I know that, number one, you're raising what you need. Maybe you need 6 million and that's okay too. Or maybe you really only need 2 million. And like, let's be honest, you got to be a little bit more scrappy. But so that's when, like we talk about really getting into the DNA of the founder and understanding the accountability and the scrappiness of the founder to make sure that they have a handle on all aspects of their business, and being really financially literate around all the different nuances of company building is a really important skill set that we don't necessarily expect all founders to have, because of course, like, how many of us have just suddenly had $2 million show up in their bank account? I don't know. I haven't, but that would be pretty awesome if I did. But the point is that you have to demonstrate an ability to be thoughtful about why you need it and have really open, transparent conversations with your VC about how you're going to manage that cash to manage the business. And that's something that I think is really important for relationship building. It's important for the health of the company. And it builds trust with your investors.
Absolutely. Okay. I could keep going with questions. I have one more, but let me just say, for anybody else who has questions, please put them in the chat and I'll ask my last one and then we'll move on to your questions. So my last question is timing of raises. And I get this question a lot and I always answer from my sort of angel perspective, but is there a good time to start a raise, a bad time to start a raise, a time you should absolutely not start your raise? How do you feel about this?
So I think you should always be building relationships. You're kind of always fundraising, like it's just part of the job. And if you are always just keeping these relationships warm, then it'll be that much easier for you to ask for money. Again, I always think Ask a VC for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice. Like there's nothing better than getting a preemptive term sheet. In general though, start. And again, when I say go be out fundraising, like you don't need to have a deck. You don't, like, as you're kind of meeting people, just sort of have a list of 8 to 10 people that you really jam with well, that, that's not manageable. You're going to talk to like dozens and dozens of people, but have like a dozen people that you just really respect their opinion. You feel like they can add value, and just every month try to get a coffee date or a virtual Zoom date with a couple of them. So figure you pretty much talk to all of them once a quarter, 2 to 3 times, like whatever cadence you can feel comfortable with to build that relationship, that they'll allow you to have, because you want them to become more vested in your business. In general, people are always going to say August is slow time for a VC. Like, sure, I aspire to one day not have to work in August, but let's be honest, that's just not the case with a lot of pre-seed managers. So I don't think I think there can be like lulls, so to speak, but in general, I mean, people say spring's a great time to raise and people say fall's a great time to raise as kind of green zone, so to speak. But fundraising is just an ongoing process. It's part of your job as a CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Yeah. And I will tell you that last August 2020, there was no lull. Everybody was working. We were going there.
I feel like that was very like 2010. Like, I don't know. I feel like that was more like when I first kind of transitioned into VC. And now, like, look, the reality is like, we're middle money managers. So you guys, the founders, are the rock stars that are changing the world. And now the early stage VC space, it's just getting more and more competitive. You have more and more choices on who to take capital from. So you got to hustle and you have to work. And as you're talking to VCs, they should be selling you on why you should take their money. So just as they're doing references on you and diligence on you, you should absolutely be doing that to them. I mean, founders should ask way more often for founder references on the VC about both companies that did well, but also companies that didn't do well. And how did they behave? How did they react? How are they supportive? Because again, like, one of the things that I love most about venture capital is that it's a very human business. And, there's skills and there's character traits, and skills aren't that hard to learn, but the character traits of just really genuinely enjoying helping other people and really thinking about your network holistically to make connections, like, you just can't teach that to people. And so you should really just be interviewing and doing diligence, see who's in their portfolio, see who's on their track record that they've backed before. Because again, you want to know who you're going to be working with for 6, 8, 10 years. I mean, we've had founders get divorced. I've had founders have a baby. I've had a founder's parent pass away. Like, these are just real life things that happen over the course of your time together that can impact your focus and your ability to build a business. And that's okay. But you want to work with an investor that can show compassion and can empathize with you, and that you feel you can be really transparent about what's going on in your life, because you always want to know, how are you? It's really lonely and hard to build a company, and so you want to be sure that you're surrounding yourself with surrounding yourself with investors that have that dimension to their founder relationships, because it's just going to make for a really healthy and productive relationship for you.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah, ditto, 100%, everything. All right, so now I'm going to get to the questions in the chat. I'll read them out. From Barbara. When you're looking for investors, should you try to tell them what you can offer them as opposed to only what they can offer you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, again, like, you have to think about the psychology behind the investor too. And so what does an investor need beyond just a monster hit that's going to return the fund? Because at the end of the day, we are capitalists and we have our own investors that we need to return capital to. So how can you help make that investor look good to their LPs? Maybe help them raise their fund if you have family offices or LP connections. I don't think an investor would ever turn that down, because the best referral you can get as an investor is from one of your founders saying, this investor has been so helpful to my business. You got to back them. That means the world to me when founders do that. So I think it's always helpful just to be thoughtful that it can be a two-way street, because again, you're working with these people for a long time. So
Absolutely.
Be helpful to each other.
Absolutely. Okay, our next question is from Damien. Our startup is a change agent in the e-commerce industry at the intersection of human behavior and technology. Perfect for Hannah Gray.
No way.
For profit with a focus on generating environmental social impacts. Looking for our first check. How should I contact you? How should people contact you?
Oh, great question. So you can always email me, jessica@hannahgray.com. But we have all companies submit a form through our website, hannahgray.com. That's HANNAHGREY. I think we've bought almost every single domain name that we can of the different spellings of Hannah Gray to redirect. But you'll see it. And then we have an investment consideration form that we ask everybody to fill out. And we do this to really make sure it's always an open door, so that we're inclusive, so that we remove our own biases, and that we can make sure that we see opportunities from every corners of the country. So I'd say that's going to be the best way to do it, but always tweet at me, feel free to email me, but we do ask everyone to submit a form through our site.
Amazing. All right, great. Yeah, the gray is hard to spell. You never know if it's an E-Y, A-Y. Anyway.
I think we literally, this was like a brand exercise that we did. So for those of you that are curious, obviously coming from the operating side, and doing a lot of work in the commerce space and the brand space, my partner and I, we have a very deep appreciation for brand building. We wanted to name our firm something that was personal to us, but wasn't like a power word or a tree or a street name. And so Hannah Gray is actually named after our daughters. We both have a 3-year-old. They're 6 months apart. My daughter is Freya Hannah. My partner's daughter is Gunnison Gray. And it's just, a reminder that we recognize that this is the modern woman. You can have a great career and still have a family, and that just should be celebrated. So we do invest in founders, no matter what the gender is. We get that question a lot. But in terms of thinking about how we can build a brand that's really differentiated and progressive in venture capital, we believe it can create just much more emotional connections and just a halo of inclusivity than some of the other things we were considering.
That's great. That's a great story. I didn't know that story. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Barbara. How important is it to you for the founder to have put their own skin in the game at the early stages?
It depends on the capacity of the founder, right? So I'll flip this a little bit, because this is something that we've experienced fundraising for Hannah Gray, is LPs want to know how much skin we have in the game. And, we share what we're doing, which is industry standard, but not having skin in the game shouldn't be a limitation to starting a business. It's a very personal decision. Everybody has different financial nuances. I think it's always a great demonstration if you have the capacity. I think the only time it can be negative is if you've had a monster exit, or you have the financial capacity to bootstrap and you don't. That can be a negative signal. But if you're coming just out of college, if you don't have, again, the financial capacity to do it, that shouldn't be a negative signal. That shouldn't hold you back. So I would say if you have the financial capacity, it's absolutely a great signal. If you don't, just answer the question about why. Again, that transparency. But to me, if you're not taking a full-time job and you're compromising that salary and that stability, like, that should be signal enough, as opposed to saying I'm mortgaging my house and I'm taking out this and that. Like, that shouldn't be an expectation to demonstrate commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question is from Ari. Actually, this looks like 3 questions. The first part of it is, have you ever been turned off from a deal by the size of a round that the pre-seed investor is seeking?
I wouldn't say it's a turnoff if that's what the founder needs. It's more so, does this fit into our model as a fund? And our model as a fund is we look to have 6 to 8% ownership, with an initial check size between 400 and 750K. that's what we've told our LPs, our investors, that we want to strive for. And so everything we do, we strive to have a demonstration of that. So I wouldn't say it's a turnoff, but if you come to me and say we're raising 4 million at a 13 cap, whatever it is, like, that's great, but it just might not be a fit for us. But that doesn't mean it's not a great opportunity, and it couldn't be a fit for a friend of ours or a fund. But I think it's being mindful with the investor and the VC you're talking to about what their expectations are based on what they're looking to achieve as a firm. Hi.
Sorry, I just muted someone because that was a little loud, but okay.
No worries. But I think that but it brings up a great question, because I think you guys as founders should be asking the VCs these questions. So you should be asking, not just what's your initial check size, but what type of ownership stake do you like to take? Do you reserve follow-on capital for rounds? Is that something I should expect from your fund? What type of outcome are you looking for? Most VCs will say, I need every investment to return my fund. That's fine. If that's their model, if that's what they need, that's their business. It's not a big deal. But just know that they are going to be looking at your valuation through the lens of if it's a 9 million, if it's a $10 million valuation, they're getting 10%, it's worth $1 million. Can you grow into a 20x for a 200 million valuation so they get a $20 million return? What's it going to take to get there? So just have in the back of your head how the nuts and bolts of their VC fund is working, to know and assess, is this going to be a big enough opportunity for them that's going to be right for their firm? And a lot of times if VCs pass, it's because of that. It's not because of you, or it's not because of the business. It could be it just doesn't fit what they need for their model, for their returns, so they can raise more funds and stay in business themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the second question from Ari: is there a number in terms of ARR or users that you look for, which is the minimum milestone to get to for the next round, I guess, for the seed?
I wouldn't say there is. I mean, I'm definitely seeing the goalposts just move farther and farther back. I mean, for a Series A, I see companies needing a 3 to 5 million ARR. For a seed round, I'm seeing around 1 million ARR. From a user perspective, I wouldn't say I have a key benchmark, but I would just know they're always changing and they're always evolving.
And this is another good question to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you like to see? Where do you want the business? Because again, never be afraid to ask the VC these questions, because you want to know how they're thinking about your opportunity. So you can not only best position yourself and kind of proactively answer some of those questions, but it'll help you, if not with their fund, then probably with other funds too, just to better understand the thinking and the process there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then the last part of this question is, investors will often give the excuse that it's too early. Have you ever invested in a deal where a no turned into a yes with the right traction, and was that pre-seed or subsequent round?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one company that I'd known for probably a year and a half before I said yes. It's a brilliant company called Veritonic. I adore the founders. I just really connected with him. But at the time when I first met him, I wasn't sure about the audio space as a market. So they do analytics for sound. So, whether it's video, whether it's audio, whatever it might be, they are the premier intelligence platform for that. And so when I first met them, I was like, you're amazing. I would love to back you. But I just need more validation that audio is going to be a thing. And it was the same thing where, we stayed in touch. We met up a few times a year from thereafter. And then when he was coming back to raise his round, things had started to pick up with podcasts, things had started to pick up with voice and Alexa, and, just getting to know him and the team's vision, it gave me a lot of confidence to underwrite that investment. And now they're doing incredibly well. But yeah, I think when did I do that deal? 2018 maybe. And I think I first met Scott probably around mid 2016, 17 or something like that. So it's just the point where it's if you connect with somebody, you're excited about their vision, but there are things you still need to get comfortable with, then it's worth just checking in. And you should have an investor template that you send of, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. these are some interesting people we hired. These are some interesting press or content we put out. This is how you could help. And just try to get in that cadence of becoming a sparring partner, almost with those types of investors to get them really invested in your business.
Yeah, I love that, sparring partner. Okay, the next question from Julie is, I've been an angel investor for 5 years. Valuations have doubled in that time. Cutting the value is enough. Is that just what the market will bear or other factors?
I think it's what the market is going to bear for now. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't have the crystal ball. But the one thing I will say, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased. So I'll give you an example. Just because you get a term sheet for a certain valuation doesn't mean you should take that valuation. Because what then happens is that you, as the founder, are accountable to not only grow into that valuation, but to exceed that valuation by probably 2 to 3x in the next 18 to 24 months so that you can raise the next round. And then there's a lot of excitement about all the progress that you've made. So I backed one company in 2014 that came out of Y Combinator. It was a 12 million valuation, which is just ridiculous. Like, we knew it was ridiculous at the time. Totally should not have gotten that valuation. I remember having multiple conversations with the founder being like, let's just keep it real. We both know this business should be valued at like 7 to 8 million tops. Like this, and he's like, Jess, I know, but like, it's demo day and people are saying, I'll give you 12, I'll give you 14, I'll give you this. Like, and so he literally, and then, 18, 24 months later, there were some challenges raising the next round, mainly because they didn't want to signal to do a down round, definitely didn't have the momentum and traction to raise at, 15 or 20 million valuation. No big deal, it happens. But again, this is what I mean by being thoughtful about the valuation you can grow into in 18 to 24 months so that you are setting yourself up for success in the future. So I remember this founder literally said to me like, Jess, I know, I ran away with the hot girl at the dance instead of marrying the sensible girl and just like taking the lower valuation. And it's like, I get it. It's true. But just because you as a founder might get a term sheet for evaluation because it can be competitive or whatever it might be, just be really honest about yourself and where the business is to find the right partners and to get a valuation that you feel comfortable with from a dilution standpoint, but that you can just crush on the next round. Because this first early stage pre-seed round, it's really about just surrounding yourself with incredibly amazing, supportive, strategic people. It shouldn't be about optimizing for valuation, as long as you as a founder feel comfortable about how your ownership and dilution are shaking out. So that's just what I mean when some of these valuations start to go bonkers and just like get a little out of control. Like, just be mindful as a founder, is that the healthiest move for your business in the long term?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I don't think most founders are thinking ahead. It's exciting. It's exciting when you're evaluating.
Of course.
Okay. Jacques asked, we've already answered this, which is the revenue milestone for seed. The next question is, are there any examples which come to mind where an investor effectively built urgency to get you to write the first check?
Well, so I will say that the, hey, we're closing Thursday, are you in or out email, we're going to be out. Pretty much every single time we're going to be out. The best way I would say to create the urgency is if it's a group that you have gone through diligence with, that you have created a great rapport with, and it becomes a scarcity issue. And that's when you need to say, no big deal. Like, but I need to know there's 300K left in my round. I want you to have it. I think we've built a great relationship and I see the value can add X, Y, and Z. Do you want me to hold it for you? And I think creating that scarcity respectfully will force their hand a little bit to say if they're in or they're out. Because VCs will drag their feet forever. But you can't just like cry wolf and say that's happening. You can't be like, we're closing Friday. Like, you gotta try to give investors as much notice as you can, recognizing that like sometimes things move fast, and especially if there's like an interesting lead investor comes together and rounds come together quickly. But in general, I would say the best way to create urgency around a decision is to be able to respectively say like, just so you're aware, this is how much is left in the round. I do have a group that's interested, but I just respectfully want to give it to you first. Like, please just let me know by Friday or wherever it might be.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, from Vicky. What if you launched successfully in the physical retail space, then had to pivot to e-commerce during the pandemic? Allows us to change our business model during a period where undercapitalized startups like us are competing with established funded brands. Should we include in our pitch deck the data that reflects the uncertainty of market conditions, or is that a given that I guess all of this happened during COVID?
So I think, so Vicky, first of all, you are totally not alone in this. Like, just know that this happens and that's okay. I think that it's all about storytelling. And I think that it's a demonstration of how you as a founder are proactive and nimble to react to market conditions in a way that is setting your business up for success. And so I think anybody that's going to peel the layers back, they're going to be like, what happened over here? So just own it and say, you know, as a CEO, I recognize the market trends and this is what's going to be the best for the overall health and success of my business. So this is the direction that we went. And I think positioning it that way just shows that you are a student of the market, and you are able to react and steer the ship accordingly. Does that help?
Gosh, that's a hard one, right? But I mean, I think we also all investors know that the crazy things happen during COVID, just crazy things. And, you know, it just is what it is.
Totally.
Okay, the next question. Is it necessary to get an intro to investor first, or is it okay to email the venture fund directly?
You should always email the fund directly. I am not into this, we require a warm intro. Like, look, at the end of the day, like, this is a relationship business. Again, VCs are middle money managers. We are also selling our cash to you, and we want you to take our money. So I think that, you know, you as an entrepreneur should really think, like, if this person isn't responsive and they have this kind of closed bubble of only referrals from their network, like, is that the type of group you want to work with? It's one of the things that really inspired us to have this consideration form on our website, is because we don't require a warm introduction. We want to see things outside of our network, because we believe that there is just opportunity with diversity, opportunities outside of just our inner circles. And, you know, it's just, it's an elitist mentality that doesn't exist at our firm. But at the end of the day, I think it shows good. I think a little chutzpah never hurts. And so I think as long as you are referencing why you're reaching out to that person, again, I can't tell you how many emails I've literally gotten emails that say, like, "Dear sir, I'm a Series B biotech company." And it's like, this is when I was at my corporate. It's like, okay, first of all, dear sir, seriously, you can't even like look at my LinkedIn. And second of all, we like blatantly say addressing the needs of the modern CMO. Like, you're not qualifying me as a lead, and I definitely am not a dear sir. So I think as long as you're thoughtful about that outreach, I would hope that manager would respond to you.
Yeah, I'm going to add something there, which is also, don't do it in such a clearly that you just spammed 100 different investors using a MailChimp with all the MailChimp branding, where you didn't even personalize a little bit. Like, it's just, you know, I also accept all cold emails, and I'm happy, and I respond to every single one except for those spammy ones.
Yeah. I would also add to that, like, if you're thinking about cold emailing the investor, like, I think a great format of it is just like, "Hi, so-and-so, like, I noticed you invested in X, or you have operating experience at Y, and your insights into X, Y, and Z would be really helpful to me as I'm building my company. Here's a boilerplate blurb about what I'm building, like 4 to 6 sentences max. Would you like to learn more?" Like, don't necessarily send your deck. Don't necessarily just send bullets and bullets and bullets. Just like wet their whistle and give it as a teaser, because you should also, you want to control who sees your deck. And so I think that just making it personalized, like Sapna said about why their experience, whether it's operating experience, investment experience, connections, whatever it might be, will be helpful. A quick snapshot about what you're building, and then just ask if you can tell them more. And don't worry if they don't respond right away. Like you get a lot of these emails, so I would say give it like a couple weeks, maybe ping a follow-up. But again, think about moving on, cutting bait if it's not a fit. That's okay too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I know we're running out of time and we have so many more questions, so I'm kind of jumping around.
I'll try to be fast. So
I do want to get this one answered, which is, how do you know if you should be raising from angels or pre-seed VC investors?
Oh, great question. I think your first round is probably going to be a combination of both. Is the reality. The one nuance that I'll say, and Sapna, you should definitely jump in here too, is angels and pre-seed funds have different intentions and motivations behind why they're investing. A VC fund, a pre-seed fund, an institutional fund, is going to have different nuances to their business that they're going to be accountable for. They have to have those monster exits. They have to be getting those markups. And a personal angel doesn't have that. A personal angel might just like fall in love with you as a person and want to be along your ride and your vision. And you know what? If you exit for $60 million and it's a 5X, that is like amazing. So just again, it's understanding the profile of who you're taking capital from as you're pitching them. But in general, I think I love being surrounded by smart angels like Sapna in the early rounds because they're really hands-on, have great experience and great connections to add value.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add, I wrote a blog post somewhere during the depths of COVID, I think it was. It's, but I haven't written one since. So it's at the top of my website at fundraise.com, which is how to find angel investors. And I go into all the different sort of motivations as well of how angels invest, because all angels are a little bit different, whereas VC funds, I think there's a little bit more of a process there. And that might be a helpful read on this question. And it is now 2:00 and we didn't get to all the questions, which I knew was going to happen, but Jessica, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
So much great information. Thank you all for coming. Everybody who's on here, keep in mind hannahgray.com if you want to reach out. Perfect. If you want to reach out, to me, info@redgiraffeadvisors.com. You will also be now on the RetailX email list, and you can get an invite to our Slack group if you haven't already joined it. And the next RetailX is next week, Thursday at 1:00, all about building wholesale relationships for D2C brands. So I hope to see everyone there.
And I'll just answer one question really quick that says, what will we not invest in? We don't do crypto. We don't do life sciences. We don't do biotech. We don't do cannabis. Don't do life sciences. It's kind of broad range.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks,
Bye, everyone.